Welcome to part 2 of the discussion with two ladies that leave you with your jaw hanging. When you listen to them, you wish there were no technological restrictions. You wish you could record them, and you wish that they have the gift of immortality. The second person I'm going to be introducing this afternoon, that's after I tell you who we are. We're doing this under the banner of VUKA WAY, and VUKA WAY is an NGO that deals with women and youth empowerment. Omika Seif and myself have been involved as the two consultants who are working with VUKA WAY in our own private capacities, but under their banner. And for Women's Day 2020, we are not looking at a bells and whistles celebration. We are looking at remembering women, strong women that have left a legacy and have walked through the corridors of the prison of Pietermaritzburg. Talking about the prison, Omika, you've been in the acting field for a while, and Shakespeare said all the world's a stage. What is your comment about that?
I think lots of the time the perception is that acting is escapism. For me, it's not escapism. I go back to what Ella Bain said. It's about telling stories. It's telling stories to the world. And the more the actor becomes immersed in that role, the better the actor becomes. So it's fundamentally important for me that we use theater to tell our stories. It becomes a means of communicating. And I think going back to the prison story, if we look at it in the movies, a lot of the things are more glorified than they actually are in reality. But the fact that this is Women's Month, I just want to draw attention to oftentimes us as women create our own little cages, our own little prisons. Sometimes the key is right there, but we look beyond that. We're so confined to remaining in this little space that we forget that we actually hold the key to open that particular cage. So, being Women's Day, being on that stage, I think my message to women, tongue-tied I'm becoming now, is that we actually need to use our wounds as our armor and not as our shackles. That's ultimately what sets us free.
So that actually echoes what Ella Bain had to say. Our next speaker, and I'm going to repeat what I said in part 1. Much younger, and Di Milford was on this same board of an NGO, Midlands Women's Group. And I used to just admire this lady. There was wisdom. If you spoke about funding proposals, jet black hair, neat court shoes. It's just that image that stuck in my mind. And Di had this matronly look. Thank you, Di, that you've lost that matronly look, because I was brought up by a matron, and it's not the easiest thing. So I'm really grateful that you have lost that matronly look. So that's a plus sign. You have so much to offer. I'm not going to mention all the great things you do, because you're going to talk about it. But to me, to read something written by somebody else is it's mind-blowing. I go through people's profiles when I'm introducing somebody, and Di, this was on your LinkedIn. So I do suggest that you go to LinkedIn more often and read what people have to say about you. So here it is, and this is written by Brian Andrews. Di is highly skilled and integrous and has unbounded enthusiasm for her work and has a track record of great ability to connect people from different backgrounds and is a great co-worker in the NGO sector of South Africa. Wow. Need I say anything more?
Wow, thank
Di
you.
Milford, lead us into the history of Project Gateway and everything else that goes on there, please.
Thank you. Well, thank you for that. And thank you to Dr. Brian Andrews for those very kind words. Gosh, I will definitely check my LinkedIn account a bit more often. I think for me, when I look back in history, for my life particularly, I grew up in the Midlands, So I grew up very privileged in those days, but I had a father who was very radical. And all he kept saying to us all the time was, never forget the poor, never forget the poor. And, you know, growing up as a young girl, you don't really understand what he's talking about. But fortunately, because it was a farm type environment, you know, we ran barefoot through the mud and the dust, and we got involved with people's lives who weren't as privileged as we were. And we just thought that that was the norm. But once I'd left school and I became a little bit more aware of society and how society operates, I could clearly see before me this huge disparity between the privileged people and the poor. Through no fault of their own, they just lacked most of the resources that we had. And in the early days, I joined a church that Dr. Brian Andrews, the same gentleman, was leading. And he used to say to us, don't come to church on Sundays and not do anything about people's lives Monday to Saturday. It's very important that you put your energy into helping people and assisting people Monday to Saturday. And by the way, you come to church on Sunday to be refilled and replenished yourself. That's why you come to church. But you come to church to give out from Monday to Saturday. And that really rang true with what I was feeling at the time. So Dr. Brian Andrews and I are still very great friends today. He's a retired gentleman now. And he was one of the founders of Project Gateway. Project Gateway, during the 1980s, there were actually 3 gentlemen who came together. And I'm going to reiterate that it was the 1980s, because we all know the political situation in South Africa at the time. There was an African Zulu pastor from Aluza in the Edendale Valley called Baba Ernest Sakali. There was Dr. Brian Andrews, and Ernest had come to Brian and said he had difficulty holding church in Aluza because there was huge fighting going on in the valley. And I'm sure those of you that were in Pietermaritzburg or around Pietermaritzburg at the time will recall that. So he found it very difficult to hold church. So illegally, Brian Andrews invited his congregation to join with ours. Now that was in the late 1980s, and that was very difficult because in actual fact, you weren't meant to be doing those kind of things. And then about 2 years later, an Afrikaans dominee came to town, Dominee Piet Dreyer, and he started a church and met Brian Andrews and Ernest Sakali. And then he decided that he wanted to bring his congregation in together. So now, in about 1990, way before the breakdown of apartheid, there were rumors of what was happening, but there was a lot of rumor of war in the valley, in the Edendale Valley, which is just outside Pietermaritzburg. We have an Afrikaans dominee, we have an English pastor, and we have a Zulu mfundisi, all talking together and bringing their 3 congregations together, which was unheard of. So that was the culmination and the start of Project Gateway. Project Gateway was then, because they felt the need was so big in the communities, and in particular in the Edendale Valley, they felt the need was so great that they couldn't do that. Those churches were all very small churches. So they opened it up to any church in Pietermaritzburg that wanted to become involved at the time. And 21 founded churches, and I'm going to use the race groups because we can understand, black, white, colored, and Indian, didn't matter. All came together, joined this organization called Project Gateway, and signed the Constitution in 1992. We got the keys to the old prison in October 1991. So next year, for the 2021 year, it will be a celebration for us when we got the keys. So on the 29th of October 1991, they received the keys to the old prison. Now, the old prison had been standing empty. It was empty for about 3 or 4 years. They had moved all the prisoners up to the new prison in Napierville. They've subsequently built another new one. So it wasn't in the best of shape. It was derelict. It had been empty for 3 years. There was long grass, there was weeds, there was paint falling off the walls, there was all those kind of things. But it gave them a center where these churches could come together and work through a developmental program. So the vision that we got, or that those 3 men had together, was to take people from a place of hopelessness and move them onto a place of hope through the gateway. Now, we all know, and I can remember thinking, of farm days and riding horses. Nobody ever stuck in a gateway. You opened the gate and hopefully you went through the gate and closed it behind you. That's the idea of the name gateway. It's a place through which people should move. They must come in hopeless and leave with better hope or more hope than when they came in. So we moved into the old prison, and the old prison logo that we use is the old Pietermaritzburg prison from darkness to light. Because as has been mentioned earlier, prisons are not nice places. And people are not treated well in prisons. So there's a lot of darkness and a lot of heaviness and a lot of trauma that happens within a prison context. And Project Gateway was determined that they were going to turn that around and make this place a place of light. So we started a few programs way back in the 1990s. And the program has developed and changed, and it should do as times develop and change. But the one thing that the executive board kept saying to us way back in the early 1990s is the original jail building, built in 1862, will not be used for projects. You can find other buildings on the site, you may use those, but we may not use that. We must preserve it. We must create a museum. We must remember those who were incarcerated within the prison system in South Africa, but in particular within that prison. Now, that original building built in 1862 was the first jail building built in the city. Prior to that, if people were in prison, they were kept at the police station, which was where Publicity House was eventually, their rooms at the back there, with bars on the windows, and that was where they kept them. But from 1862, they built the prison, and in those days, it was way out of town. It was on the route to the Edendale Valley, but it was far out of town. I mean, today it's almost in the city center, but in those days, it was a long way out of town. So Project Gateway moved in there, and over the years, we have developed various programs, and we've had to now renovate buildings all the time because old buildings are old. All our buildings are protected by a MAFA under the 100-year clause, and all of them under the 50-year clause as well. So we have to work within the MAFA regulations when we're doing buildings and changes and things like that. But the exciting thing was that in the early 2000s, we managed to get some funding to begin to develop the museum. And we've taken that through 3 or 4 different stages because there's a huge amount of research that's needed to go into that prison. I think we've done 5 or 6 years of concerted effort of research, and we're still nowhere near everything that happened there. And there's a lot more research that needs to be done. So we are very grateful to the Gandhi Foundation because they requested us to put the Customer Gandhi exhibit upstairs, which we have, and it's been there for a number of years now. And for us, for me particularly, that's a pivotal point because as most of you know, and I'm sure Bunny definitely knows this, that up at the station, which is less than a kilometer away, it's probably 300 yards away or 400 yards away. The Pietermaritzburg station has huge significance to Mahatma Gandhi. So we link very closely with the station and with the museum that the Gandhi committee have done at the station and where Customer Gandhi was imprisoned. So it all talks to itself. Also the Peace March that's been held every year for the last, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 years has started off. They go up to the station to begin with, and they come down to the old prison, and then they start the Peace March. So it's a wonderful connection that we have with the whole Gandhi, Customer Gandhi particularly, but Mahatma Gandhi as well, all that Gandhi and the Gandhi committee and all those people, and we work very closely with them. And then, of course, with Bunny's development of the Freedom Route now, which is the latest wonderful, exciting thing that's happening, with that development now and with the bus that's happening, we become one of the stop points on that. So that for me is going to be very exciting as well.
Okay, that's very interesting. Di, can you perhaps give me names of other females that were held in that prison?
Yes, I was just listening to what Ella Gandhi was saying earlier, and I think we need to research that even more. You know, we've the researchers have found a whole lot of photographs and things which are downstairs in the prison. So I need to now go and spend time in there and actually research through on those touchscreen tables to find out exactly who else was there and who those names were, and what the significance was of them. Because we talk about the 1913 march, which led to the imprisonment of Kasturba Gandhi, which was when they marched from the Natal in those days through to the Transvaal, and then coming back and then found them guilty. They'd crossed borders without permits and all sorts of things. So we need to expand on that too, which is, I think, is something we can do going forward as well. We need to do that.
So
how does Gateway operate
Yeah.
in this day and age? Let me just give you the three main areas that we focus on currently. We have what we call care ministries. Now, care ministries start with people who are desperate and destitute. You can come to Project Gateway. We have a social worker. She will assist you with your need, and if we can't help you, we will try and pass you on to somebody else, but we will try and care for you. But we believe that early childhood development is one of the main starting points of changing South Africa. So we've got very involved with the ECD program. We support 17 creches out in the communities, and that totals over 890 children altogether. So our social worker goes out and works with them and checks them and makes sure that carers of creches are not just carers of creches. They can be educators as well. So we're educating the carers as to how they can educate the children. And we're working with a program called Singwa Kwenza, which has an ECD program where all the toys are made from recycled items. So there's absolutely no cost involved. It's merely picking up the rubbish around you, and you can educate your children. And then we move on to Gateway Christian School, which is a fully fledged Umalusi accredited school, registered with the Education Department. That goes from grade RR to grade 7. And then we have the Gateway School of Fashion. Now that's a very interesting project because for many years we taught sewing. And then we were approached by an organization in England called the University of Creative Arts, based in Rochester in the UK. And they wanted to upgrade our sewing into a fashion school. And we've done many wonderful things where we've taken young, unemployed, out-of-school youth who want to learn to sew and make fashion, and they've exhibited at the Durban July. And we've had one or two that have done very well and come in the top 10. So our fashion school is really amazing. It really is. So we're trying to empower women so that they can go into business, they can generate income for themselves. And then, of course, hopefully in turn, that helps and relieves the situation that we have in South Africa regarding poverty. So that's how we're operating at the moment.
Thank you, Dal. You mentioned Amafa, and I know how particular they are about the old buildings, etc. I must be very honest. I come to Project Gateway. I've got wonderful memories, as I said to you earlier on, when you were just a small organization. I had every excuse to come there just to have scones and tea at your jailbreak cafe. That was one of the best places. And then, of course, you know, life changed, and I've come back now, and I'm looking at Project Gateway. Of concern to me, could you tell me if Amafa also has rules with regard to ablution there? Because as a visitor to your organization, I do believe that that's one place that maybe the municipality hasn't looked at. If you look at, you know, a prison should be belonging to the government, etc. So what are the rules and regulations in a nutshell when it comes to upgrading facilities at your place?
Internal renovations, they're not very perturbed about. So we can upgrade facilities within internal. It's the external facade that they are worried about, and we can't obviously alter the main big buildings because some of those buildings were built as cell blocks. However, even in the museum, Amafa did give us permission to break through bigger entrances, because with tourism you want a flow, and in a prison you're trying to keep people in. So the two are absolutely contradictory to each other. So we were able to alter the prison, the existing museum, and open it up a little bit to give a better tourism flow. So they're not concerned with the interior improvement that you make. We will let them know what it is, and they won't have an issue with that at all. Okay. I think for us at Project Gateway, one of the things that we desperately need to look at is the ablution facilities, and even more so now with the COVID and the COVID pandemic that we've got. I mean, sanitizing and ablution becomes one of your most critical areas. So in order to let tourists feel free and comfortable when they come to us, we need to desperately upgrade the ablution facilities that we have there. And then keep that particular block. There is a block quite near to that museum building. We'll keep that particular block purely for the tourism industry, so we can safeguard it and not have it for, you know, just for people on the street coming in using it and that sort of thing.
And
we can do that
indirectly,
very easily.
tourism affects the economy, and the economy of the capital city will grow. So,
exactly,
you know, that's an advantage there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been so interesting. Part 1, Elaine, magnificent. Part 2, Di Milford, magnificent. Bunny, as VUKA Way, I'd like you to round up the session this afternoon. And thank you for giving Omika and I an opportunity to work as consultants on this project of yours that you've got for Women's Month 2020. And with you at the head, I know it's not going to be the project for the month. I think this is going to become a force of habit with us to do things. And, you know, I think we've moved away from bells and whistles. And COVID has taught us one thing, that you work on the ground. So, Bunny, would you like to kindly end off the session for the afternoon, please?
I'm just in awe with the social capital that you two humanitarians bring to the party. I don't think so. The country ever realizes the amount of knowledge and experience and guidance you all offer. I wish a lot more people are going to listen to this, so it definitely will influence them. Yabin, you have given us so much of food for thought. I am committing, together with the other 4 ladies, to read the 1954 Women's Charter. We really need to learn a lot more, and we need to publicize what our fellow women are doing. There's so few stories. And of course, corruption and racism and gender-based violence are issues we're not going to change overnight, but at least working with Project Gateway and amongst ourselves, we are going to try to attempt to at least change a few people's lives around us. Di, collaboration, the key word. Everyone talks about collaboration, but you have the absolutely perfect example of collaboration. From the 1980s to now, if one has to see how Project Gateway has developed, it's only developed through goodwill and collaboration. So we really, I am so impressed with your place of light, because light is something that is in every religious field, in everyone's lives. And perhaps in your logo, you should have a candle now, or a light, because that's something that touches anyone's hearts. We definitely are, as a team, going to apply our minds in finding solution to bring peace and joy, even if it's for a few members. I firstly would like to thank Ilaben for believing in me, in coming through. You know, I didn't share this with anybody, and it crossed my mind. I just started on the Gandhi project, and I sent through a draft brochure to Ilaben, and she drove and found me where I am in Burger Street, and I was humbled, I was embarrassed, I was amazed, I was fascinated. When she walked in, I can still remember, I didn't know what to do, how to address her. And over the years, I found that you have been so much in promoting me. And the same with Di, our cup of coffee. that have led to wonderful developments. And now we have Shanta and Omika in our midst, and jointly we can only go forward. So I'd like to end to wish you all a wonderful Women's Day tomorrow. And in the true Ubuntu spirit, let us say, Watinta Mafazi, Watinta Magota. Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you very, very much. I really am lost for words, which is quite unusual for me. I think this is going to put me on a high for quite a while. And to get me down from there is going to take a lot of effort. So that's going to be Bunny's responsibility. And once again, I'm so grateful to you two ladies. And if you look at you on your screen, you know, you're just so perfectly on my right-hand side, where I'm looking at you. So it's like, you know, I am a person who's right-handed, and as if you're going to continuously be that guide for me in some way or the other. Thank you very much, and a happy Women's Day tomorrow and every day of your life. And if we can make life better for the ladies on the ground, let's do it. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you, Omika.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Can we have Omika's final words?
Oh, okay. For me, I think this is one for the history books. Auntie Shantz, much like you, I think it's not very often that I'm left speechless or without words. Yeah. But this actually just warms my heart. Difficult to find the words to actually quantify how much spending this time has actually meant. And I think, Bunny, you've summed it up perfectly. Collaboration. There's so much, and there's so many little powerhouses with wisdom and ideas and a heart to just serve the community. And for me, I always maintain that, yes, historically we observe Women's Month in the month of August, but I celebrate women every single day. And my message is that we need to come together as women, because collectively we have impact. And I'd like to think that this afternoon has set that in motion. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm humbled. And this for me will hold a special place in my heart forever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to everyone.